What is going on, YouTube people? Northeast Ohio Cards and Comics. Here today for a video idea I stole from Flipping Steve. That's right. About a week or two ago, he talked about doing like his top five of sports cards and top five comic books. Maybe not sports cards, but basically making a list of the things that he would like to add to the collection, like the next things on his hit list. So I am partially stealing that idea and kind of putting my own little twist on it. So we're at the end of the year, and it's kind of like, look back, look ahead type time in the wonderful world. And I wanted to kind of put together a list of what is next on my hit list. So I've knocked some big things off this year. Obviously, we'll do probably a video about that between Christmas and New Year's or something. I got some ideas for some, best pickups and current collections and all that jazz, but we'll save that for the end of the month. But just covering a few briefly, I wanted a Lebron Topps Chrome rookie. I picked up one of those in a lower grade in a PSA 8. Giant size XMen #1, Hulk 181. Those types of things were knocked off the list this year. So we need goals and we need things to shoot for. So I encourage you all to do an exercise like this. Yours might vary. It might be comic books, it might be cards, it might be non-sports cards. It could be like Steve and be music cards or a little bit of everything. PMGs, whatever floats your boat. So whatever has brought you to my channel, whether it's Marvel cards, comics, sports cards, whatever. The first thing that I would like to know is in 2022, I want you to really think about this for a second. If you have, maybe you might just know this off the top of your head. What are three, and I'm going to leave this very broad. What are three collectibles that you would like to acquire in the next year? By the time we get to the end of 2022, assuming the world is still spinning on its axis, what are three things you would like to add to your collection? It doesn't have to be PC. It could be maybe you're buying it to sell 5 years, whatever. Just three things you want to bring into your inventory. I'm curious. So leave those in the comments down below. It could be anything at all. Any collectible type thing. That's the only loose restriction I'll put on it. So I'm going to run out. I have 10 things. I'll try to move through these pretty quick. 6 are comic books, 4 are sports cards. So with all that being said, like, comment, subscribe. Today's video is sponsored by MySlabs.com, home of the 1% seller fee plus PayPal goods and services. Absolutely great platform where many of these items that I'm hunting for can be found. So a quick word from our sponsor, and then we will hop into today's video.
Tired of paying 10%, 15%, or more to sell your cards, comics, and digital collectibles? How does 1% sound? Too good to be true? Well, not anymore. MySlabs.com is the web's premier user-driven marketplace for buying and selling slabbed cards, sealed wax, and now slabbed comics and digital collectibles. So the next time you're forced to pay 10% or more to sell something from your collection, head over to MySlabs.com and join the 1% revolution.
Once again, thanks to our friends over at MySlabs.com for sponsoring today's video. Let's go ahead and dive into our list. Don't forget, like, comment, sub, and give me your three. That's the comment I want. I want the three things you were looking to add into the PC or the collection, whatever you want to call it, the case, the shelf. First up for me, Lebron Topps Chrome 2007 Refractor. The grades that I have up here aren't necessarily the grades that I'm looking for, though in this particular card, I would like this in like a BGS 9 or a PSA 9, most likely. I kind of started this little project late this year, rather, I should say. But when I traded for the 04 LeBron Refractor in a PSA 9. A little bit after that, I acquired the Choctaws PSA 9 Refractor. I would like to put together the final pieces of this puzzle. There are two that I really want, this one and another one that's on the list. There is 1 year, and I forget the year off the top of my head. I think it's 2005. It's not his best looking card. It's white bordered. It's him dunking in like the yellow ugly Cavs jerseys. So I may skip that one. But I would like these 4. I have 2 of the 4 already. I'm going to probably skip the rookie year because it's just so expensive, at least for now. Maybe one day. But an 07 LeBron Refractor is on the list. Once again, in a BGS 9 to PSA 9 is what I would be looking for. So absolutely iconic card. in my opinion. Great photo and a sweet looking design. I really like this design. This is the KD rookie year. So you see this design quite a bit pop up. But this is, and these are in no particular order. I should mention that as well. This is in no particular order on these. The only thing that I have done here is group the sports cards with sports cards and comic books with comic books. So 07 refractor up first. Next up on the list, the 09 refractor. This one is actually the most expensive one of the non-rookie years. It's right up there with Chalk Toss. Sells pretty comparably to that. This one's numbered out of 500. And in a PSA, same thing. I'd be looking at like a PSA 9, BGS 9.5. These typically go for low 2s to mid 2s. I would say pop on this in a PSA 9 is like in the 60s or the 70s. There's not a lot of them. Once again, this is numbered out of 500. This is one of his more iconic photos, I think. It's a breakaway dunk from the playoffs against the Pistons. Just a great action shot. Very low pop card. Very nice looking. This one is definitely on the list as well. And this would complete my quartet of LeBron Topps Chrome to pair those two up with the 04 and with the Chalk Toss. Like I said, the 05, I'm a little hit or miss on. That would be, I'd have to get it as a steal of a deal because I just don't like the way the card looks. Whereas these two, I love the way that they look along with the 04 and the Chalk Toss. So those are the first two on the sports card list. Switching gears from basketball to football, it might be time. It might be time to get the Jim Brown rookie. 1958 Topps Jim Brown. I honestly probably wouldn't even go as high as a PSA 5. I'd probably be looking more along the lines of like a 3 to 5, depending on pricing. Maybe I could trade into it or something, just something along those lines, but a low to mid grade. This card gets extremely pricey, but I think it's time to try to add one to the collection. So if one comes across my desk, if I come across the path of one at a show or something, I'm at least intrigued by it at this point. It's always kind of been on the list, but it's been far down. There's just always been things in front of it. So, and I don't expect, I should say, I have 10 things on this list. I do not expect to acquire all 10 of these things next year. I would be perfectly happy if I knock off 2 or 3 of them, if that. I knocked a lot off the list this past year. I was extremely lucky. I don't know that luck will continue. We'll see. But, once again, I don't expect to be sitting here at the end of next year and saying, oh, look, I nailed all 10 of these. That's not going to be the case. And the list could change. You never know. You never know. But Jim Brown 58 Topps in a low to mid grade is definitely on the list. And then switching gears again, last sports card on the list. We're a little comic book heavy. I know. And also, everything on this list is more long-term holds. These are not things that I am buying to quick flip in, 3 months, 6 months, whatever. Some of these could be, maybe I would sell it down the road at some point in time. But I view these more as long-term holds / investments / PC, whatever you want to call it. It's nice when your PC is also potentially has some long-term value to it. So you could eventually, cash some of that out. So these would not be things that I'd be looking to like buy in January and sell in February or anything like that. This would be stuff I'd be looking to buy and hold for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years if I'm lucky enough to not have to sell it for some other reason. Switching over to baseball, a Juan Soto first Bowman auto. I have a PSA 10 up here. I don't expect to buy a PSA 10. If I'm lucky, maybe a BGS 9.5, but most likely a PSA 9 or maybe even a BGS 9. I would probably want a PSA 9 before a BGS 9, but I would really like a Soto first Bowman auto. I picked up the Bowman's Best this past year to kind of satiate my Soto Bowman or Soto auto desires. That's obviously not a first Bowman. That's just a rookie. And it's a Bowman's Best. It's not a Topps or a Chrome or anything like that. But he doesn't have a lot of options for cards, especially rookie year stuff. So I was fine with it and I got a good deal on it. But I would eventually like to add a first Bowman, even in a PSA 10, into the old collection. I really believe in Soto as a long-term play when it comes to baseball. I think he's as safe gets, given already existing resume, plus the future of what he could do. I am willing to ride it out with him. So this is a card that is 100% on my radar that I would like to add, and I've been talking about this card forever. On the sports card side of things, this one is probably the highest. I know these are in no particular order, but this is probably the highest on my list. This is the one that I am most actively looking for on the sports card side of things. Anytime I go to a larger show, because I know no one locally has one, anytime I go to a larger show, this is one of the main cards on my radar to potentially buy or trade for. So this one is 100% on the list. Switching over to comic books. These are in a little, I guess they're really not in any particular order. There is one that stands above the rest, though. We'll get to it in a minute. But first up, kind of on the lower end of things, X-Men number 50. If I was putting these in order, this would probably be number 10 on the list of 10. So for those not in the comic book world, I know I get a little bit of cross viewership here. What is the steal line from Swaggle House? What is the significance of this book? This is a absolutely iconic X-Men cover. X-Men number 50. It is when the logo changed. When it went from the old, 50s, or the old 60s logo, 50s, 60s logo on the X-Men to the newer style block lettering that they have ran through all the way to today. It's been the same X-Men logo all the way up until present day. This is the second appearance of Polaris, an absolutely classic cover. Just a gorgeous looking book. And as anyone that knows me knows that I am a massive X-Men fan. If I was to air quote PC something, it would be X-Men stuff. More so than probably most sports cards. And this is kind of like if you have an X-Men collection, you have to have this in there at some point in time. It's like required reading to have this book in a collection just because of this cover, the significance of the logo switch. Just an absolutely gorgeous looking book. Next up, one that would probably be number 9 on the list, and I've told this story before. It's X-Men 266. It's the first appearance of Gambit. I talked about this a ton. This is one of those books that it shot up during the boom. It's been sitting at $1,000 forever. It feels like forever. It's been sitting at $1,000. Sometimes it goes for $900. Sometimes it goes for $1,100. But it's basically right around $1,000. Give or take maybe 10%, 15% either way, kind of depending on the mood of things. This is going to be one of those ones I always say, I could always get that later. Let me just push that off to the side. Something else will jump in front of it in line, and I'll just push it off and be like, I'll get that next. I know exactly what's going to happen. Something is going to come out with a casting rumor, whatever, for Gambit, and this is going to go nuts. Now, the good side is this is not a super low census count book. There's a decent amount of these out there. This came out in the early 90s, and there was a lot of them printed. It is a higher census count book, but it still goes for pretty good value because there's a large demand for this. But I can tell you right now, if there is any sort of news on him being cast in a movie, whatever, this will go crazy. So I should eventually just knock this thing off, get it in the collection, and be done with it. But I keep putting other stuff in front of it because of what I just mentioned. I'm like, I can always just get that later. There's a ton of these things out there. I know it's going to burn me one of these days. I absolutely know that it is. So I should just set aside the $800 or $900, $1,000, and just buy it and knock it out. But I'm sure something will jump in front of it. Next up, X-Men 14 from 1965. First appearance of the Sentinels. This is going to sound weird. I am a massive fan of the Sentinels. They are probably my favorite X-Men villain besides Magneto. And I may even have them in front of Magneto. I don't know why. I've just always been a sucker for any story that involved the Sentinels. I don't know if it's because of the old 90s X-Men cartoon or what, but I've always been a sucker for Sentinels. I would absolutely love to have one of these on display next to my HasLab Sentinel that sits behind me now on the live streams. I picked that up a couple months ago, or like a month ago now. I would absolutely love to have one of these books set up next to it. Absolutely great cover. Very, very vibrant reds. Tough to find in a decent grade. I'd probably something like this. I should mention, like in a 266, I would be looking at a 9.8 and a 9.8 only. This book is so common, I wanted it a 9.8. X-Men 50, I'd be happy with anything above a 9. This is very reasonable-ish in low 9s. 9.8, it gets really pricey. 9.6, it's even pretty pricey. But low 9s, you could get it for, I forget the numbers off the top of my head, maybe 1,000, maybe 1,500 for a 9 or a 9.2. I don't remember off top. This I would actually wouldn't mind in like a 7. Like this grade right here, these go for around 1,200 to 1,500 bucks, given depending on the day. I forget what the most recent comps are. I think this one was listed for 1,600 when I was looking at the sale listing on it. That's a little high based off recent sales prices. But the key thing here is how does the red look whenever you're looking at one of these? How vibrant is the red still determines a lot of what these sell for. So I would really love an XMen 14. Great cover. You have the XMen in the background. Sentinel looks really cool. Bright red. Just a great looking book. Next one on the list. This one's a little higher on the list. These are probably the top. 2 of the next 3 are on the top of this list. One of them is X-Men 101. First appearance of Phoenix. Iconic cover. Much more in line, like as much as I like the old school X-Men stuff like this from the 60s, this is not my X-Men. This is my X-Men. I was not born in 76, but this is the X-Men that I fell in love with when I discovered comics. It was originally my entry level drug I've talked about before was Pride of the X-Men. That's the first thing I ever seen with the X-Men, and I was hooked. Then I fell in love with the Marvel trading cards. I saw Pride of the X-Men. Years went by. Fell in love with the Marvel trading cards, which led me into getting back into comic books, or getting into comic books for the first time in the early 90s during the Jim Lee run. The Jim Lee run was my first X-Men, and then I went back. And this is the X-Men. The Chris Claremont run on X-Men is the run that just solidified it for me. Jim Lee artwork on the modern day, and then going back and reading like in trade paperbacks or whatever I could get my hands on, because there wasn't apps back then. The Claremont stuff is what solidified it, and then throw a little icing on the cake with the 90s X-Men cartoon, and you have a happy young 10 to 14-year-old boy just living my best life. So this is an absolutely iconic book. I would love to have this. This is probably number 2 on my list, as opposed to one of the next 2 that we're going to talk about. I'm going to go a little out of order here. We'll save the number 1 on my list, and I think it's the same as Steve's as well. Next one up, not this. I don't know where this would fall on the list. Somewhere in the middle. ASM 50. Now, I am much more of an X-Men guy than a Spider-Man guy, but I do have some Spider-Man keys. I have an ASM 252. I have a Secret Wars number 8. Some Spider-Verse stuff. And I do like the Kingpin. For those that don't know, this is the first appearance of the Kingpin. This book came out in 1967. Also, an absolutely iconic cover. One of the most famous Spider-Man covers that there is, probably. For anyone that has a serious comic book collection, probably a key book to have in that run. And like I said, I'm not like the biggest Spider-Man guy in the world. I would much prefer to buy X-Men stuff. But I understand the significance of this book. And I would like to just have it in my collection as a nice display piece. This one, unfortunately, is a terrible time to buy it. There are Kingpin rumors about him coming back into the MCU, literally on a daily basis these days, and it has caused this book to really spike up, and it was not cheap to begin with. Even in a mid-grade, like a 5, this goes for probably $1,000 to $2,000 easily. But absolutely iconic cover. I would like to add this into my small Spider-Man collection compared to my larger X-Men collection. But I think this is really like a must-own for anyone that's a big Marvel fan, basically. And I really enjoy Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin and the Daredevil TV series on Netflix. And it sounds like he is going to make a return very soon. Last on the list, and probably number 1 on the list, I would actually like to knock this one out sooner rather than later. There's actually a chance, if things fell the right way, that I might try to get one of these before 2021 ends. We will see. A little tough right now around the holidays and stuff. Got other stuff I need to throw money at. But X-Men number 4. And I know that this one is one flipping Steve has talked about as well. This is on both of our radars. This came out in 1964. I would be looking at this in probably anywhere from a 4 to a 6 grade, depending on how good it looked. For those that don't know, this is probably one of the most key X-Men books that exist, in my opinion. Obviously, X-Men number 1 would be in front of it. I would probably put Giant Size X-Men number 1 in front of it, but it's in the top 5, probably, in my opinion. It might even be number 3. For those that don't know, this is the second full appearance of Magneto, which that alone makes it fairly significant. First appearance of Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. First appearance of Scarlet Witch is what's driving the prices on this right now. Also Quicksilver, to a lesser degree, first appearance of Mastermind, first appearance of Toad, and first appearance of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. This is just a mega X-Men key. There's so much goodness going on in this book. Just on the second appearance of Magneto alone and him being on the cover makes this a iconic book. It's a great cover. And then the first appearance of Scarlet Witch, who's going to be a key player in the MCU, I think, for at least the next few years, if not longer. Maybe we get Quicksilver back, and if they ever do an X-Men movie, or whenever they do an X-Men movie, there's a decent chance we get one of Mastermind or Toad, which, that's not as big of a deal for this book, but we are 100% going to get Magneto. And guess what? X-Men #1 is the first appearance of Magneto. Most people are priced out of that. X-Men #1 and a 1.5 to 8 is like an $8,000 book. This is much more affordable as his second full appearance. This book will 100% get run just based off Magneto stuff alone whenever he comes to the MCU. And spoilers, he will come to the MCU. You can't do the X-Men without Magneto, and the X-Men are coming to the MCU. So this is the ultimate long play. This book will always have value. One, just because people are always looking to put together an early run of X-Men, and it has a bajillion key first appearances in it and a massive key second appearance. And it's from 1964. There's just not a lot of them out there. So I made a comment today. I did the video yesterday about like the goats and the vintage stuff and a little bit older stuff. And I get this question a lot about how come I don't talk about a lot of vintage sports cards. I just don't enjoy vintage sports cards to the same degree that I enjoy the modern. The appeal of the modern sports card is the chase, the action, the being able to watch Ja Morant and Soto and Luka and Darius Garland and Evan Mobley and whoever else on a night in and a night out basis and kind of ride that wave with the players with their cards. This is my vintage. Hulk 181, Giant Size X-Men 1, X-Men 4, comic books are my vintage. That is where I put my dollars in regards to diversifying my portfolio from short-term holds versus long-term holds. A lot of my sports cards are short-term holds. Almost all my comic books are long-term holds. And then I have some sports cards that are also long-term holds as well. So that's my list. Once again, I'd like to hear your top 3 in the comments down below. Like, comment, subscribe. We will catch you guys and girls on the next one. Peace.